shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Behave yourselves!
Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So I am still processing the loss of one of the great directors, certainly one of the great artists of the 20th century, and also into the 21st century, David Lynch. And I tell you, it's still, it's not easy to believe that this man is gone. I am still trying to deal with that loss because it is a major loss. It would be a major loss to lose anybody, of course, particularly in the arts and in film. People today talk so much about content. You know, they use all these terms that have nothing to do with cinema. And here was a guy who was certainly at the top of his game in terms of being a true visionary in cinema. And we got to call it that, cinema. He was an artist, a film artist, a cinema artist. There's no other way to put it. So, anyway, I wanted to talk about this briefly because I think that there's a good chance that Blue Velvet may very well be David Lynch's most personal film out of all the films he has made. Now, this is just a matter of interpretation on my part. I don't know for sure if David Lynch ever said such a thing, but I have the feeling that Blue Velvet, which is this is a Blu-ray of it, which is beautifully done. This Blu-ray, it's really quite exquisite. The booklet, I'm sure some of you have seen this already. The room number 710, The Robin, and it's just it's very well done. I mean, nobody could have done this better to celebrate David Lynch. Isabella Rossellini there. I mean, they did a good job with his stuff. I gotta say, I one of these days have to get Mulholland Drive on Blu-ray, and I've got all of his films except for Dune. But Dune is one I may revisit pretty soon. Nonetheless, Blue Velvet, I do believe, is his most personal film. Now, the reason I say that is for a couple of reasons. One, the opening of the film, which is justifiably famous, and I think a lot of people know this opening, but I may as well address it nonetheless. And it is the town of Lumberton, and we see a close-up of a medium shot of a white picket fence with red roses, and these series of dissolves all around the town of Lumberton, including a fireman walking, or not walking, but on top of a fire engine as it's rolling by, waving, and typical suburbia, very much. It looks like a scene out of a 1950s movie, which very well may have been the intent. And then you see a older man who is watering his lawn, and he's got his garden hose, and right away something is off. We know it is, and we hear Bobby Vinton's Blue Velvet song, and the hose is stuck, and you hear the sound of the hose getting stuck, you know, and he's pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. His wife inside, Priscilla Pointer, who by the way is Amy Irving's mother, in real life, of course, she is watching some sort of a film noir movie on TV. You see a close-up of a gun, it's all in black and white, you know, and she's drinking her coffee. It's just, everything seems more or less okay, seems normal. The hose is stuck, and then he gets a heart attack. And then he falls on the ground, and then the dog comes over, and, you know, because the water's still spraying everywhere, the dog is enjoying the water, and so on. Then the camera pans away, and does an amazing tracking shot through these leaves of grass, and then you're going underground, and then you hear what sounds like monsters underneath, but actually it's ants and roaches and who knows what else. And they're digging through and doing their thing, and it's just the very idea that we see normalcy, but underneath it all, something is abnormal and something being kept hidden. which is an actual line given by Colin MacLachlan, who plays Jeffrey Beaumont. Now, of course, the two characters you see in the beginning of Blue Velvet, the father who has a heart attack, or rather the man who has the heart attack, that's Jeffrey Beaumont's father. And then Priscilla Pointer plays his mother. So he's in town, and I do feel in many ways Jeffrey Beaumont, because he's back from college because of what happened to his father, is very much like David Lynch. I do believe Jeffrey Beaumont is David Lynch in many ways. He's got the button-up shirt, which David Lynch sort of made famous, right? Buttoning the shirt all the way up to the top of the collar, but no tie. Then he finds the severed ear in the grass, and Jeffrey becomes very involved in a mystery that he, as he says, has been kept hidden. And for reasons they don't know why. And the town of Lumberton seems fairly much like a slice of Americana in many ways. All around the streets and everything else. It's typical American suburbia. But there's a street of which one of the neighbors warns Jeffrey Beaumont not to go to, which is Lincoln. And this is where crime appears, and men whistling at women. And Frank Booth, who is played by Dennis Hopper, who is a maniac. This guy's a psychotic maniac. And the character, I mean, speaking of the 1950s, the character is really no different, in a sense, from the character he played in Rebel Without a Cause, which you barely see in that film. But Dennis Hopper was in both. The point is, he could have grown up to be this guy. Dean Stockwell is this guy who sort of controls whatever it is that's going on, this very nasty business that Frank Booth is involved with, or in rather, that has to do with drugs. And there is a police officer who is involved. And this is what Jeffrey discovers. And Jeffrey reports all these things to the police captain, who happens to be Laura Dern's father in the movie. So the point is that the movie really establishes this idea of repressing and hiding information in many ways that has been kept hidden. And that underneath it all, we're all putting a smile on our faces, just like the firemen, but at the end of the day, there's something darker and much scarier going on. And that, to me, has been David Lynch's films ever since, particularly with Eraserhead. That very idea of repression, sexual repression. There was a time when David Lynch, when he was young, he was a young kid, he saw in the town he was living in a naked woman who seemed like she needed help, and sat on the curb and had her head, her hand on her head, and it was just something that really young kids shouldn't have to see, particularly when they're just playing out in the streets. And this scene is what you see in Blue Velvet with Isabella Rossellini's character, Dorothy. And she appears at night in a scene in Blue Velvet where she has teeth marks and bruises, and she's completely naked. And she's just wandering around. She doesn't seem to be present. And those are just my thoughts on it. It's just a film that really, for the first time in quite some time in film history, was a way of uncovering something darker and much more abnormal at the core of a town like Lumberton that we hadn't seen before in any film. And that's why, the film is still, I don't really consider Blue Velvet a great film, but it is certainly a unique film. And most of it is quite entertaining, for sure. But then there are scenes of raw power that are really, very unsettling. It's about him developing that empathy for people that normally most of the town residents would not want to deal with. Certainly Dorothy, played by Isabella Rossellini, or someone like Frank Booth. They're kind of afraid of them. They don't want to get near them because it's a reminder, too, that, we live in a dangerous world. And there's always danger lurking around the corner somewhere. And these people pretend like they're living in a picture postcard America, when in fact there's something going on that it's a evil force that they're denying. And that to me is really what epitomizes that opening scene with all the ants and the cockroaches and what's underneath the ground. That's the metaphor for that. And that's what David Lynch did so brilliantly in that film. So, but I do think that because of that and his upbringing and the naked woman and the Jeffrey Beaumont character, very much like a David Lynch character, or of course a David Lynch character, but maybe very much like David Lynch himself, it may be his most personal film. So those are just my thoughts. Tell me what you think about Blue Velvet, about David Lynch. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments out there, and see if you agree with me on this. It's just what I've been thinking about lately. So that's all I got to say about that. And if you are a new subscriber, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel before, please do. Just hit the notification bell for future uploads. And that's all I got to say about Blue Velvet by David Lynch. His most personal film, more than likely. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.